I watched something recently about how learning actually works in the brain, and one part of it has stayed with me since. There was a study described where two groups of people were trying to learn the same task, and the only real difference between them was how they were told about their mistakes. One group was simply told it did not work, try again. The other was told something closer to a small penalty, a loss, every time they got it wrong. The group that was just told to try again ended up performing noticeably better, mostly because they kept attempting the task far more times than the other group did. I keep thinking about how small that difference in wording actually was between the two groups. Not a different task, not a different difficulty, just a different sentence appearing after the same wrong move. That such a small shift in framing could produce a measurably different outcome suggests the story we quietly tell ourselves in the half second after a mistake might matter almost as much as the mistake itself. The video I saw was of Andrew Huberman. Every time I have tried to learn something new, I have noticed the same pattern in myself. The moment I get something wrong, some part of me quietly counts that as evidence, not just information. I do not think I have ever consciously chosen the story I tell myself in that half second. It has always just arrived automatically, the same way a reflex arrives before there is time to decide against it. That belief made me cautious in a way I never fully noticed until hearing this described plainly. There is a specific kind of tiredness I recognize now, looking back, that came from all that careful slowing down. It never felt like tiredness at the time, it felt like diligence. But diligence and hesitation apparently do not always look different from the inside. And I think I spent years mistaking one for the other. What struck me most was learning that mistakes themselves seem to be doing real, necessary work, not just marking failure along the way. Getting something wrong appears to be what actually signals to the mind that something needs to change, opening a window for real adjustment. Without that signal, apparently, very little adjustment happens at all. There is something almost counterintuitive in learning that the discomfort I was trying to avoid was not actually optional if real change was going to happen. I had always treated discomfort as a sign something was going wrong, a signal to slow down and regroup. It turns out that discomfort in this specific context might have been closer to a sign that something was finally starting to work, not a warning to be avoided at all. Once I started thinking about it this way, I noticed how much time I spent trying to skip past the messy part as fast as possible, rather than actually staying inside it. There was a specific attempt at something a few days ago where I noticed this shift happening in real time. I got it wrong, the way I usually do early on, and I felt the old familiar urge to stop and prepare more carefully before trying again. Instead, I just tried again immediately, without giving the mistake enough room to turn into a verdict about anything. It felt strange, almost too quick, like I was skipping a step that used to feel mandatory. But the step I skipped, I am increasingly convinced, was never actually necessary. It was just familiar. And I was learning to play guitar. I think what I am really trying to unlearn is not a skill at all, but a much older assumption about what mistakes are supposed to mean about the person making them. Somewhere along the way, probably very early, I picked up the idea that getting something wrong repeatedly was information about my own limits, rather than simply information about the task still being unfamiliar. Those are two very different things, and I had been quietly treating them as the same thing for most of my life. None of this makes the early, clumsy stage of learning something feel pleasant. I do not think it is supposed to, but there is a real difference between discomfort I'm trying to escape as quickly as possible and discomfort I have decided to simply remain inside of a little longer without treating it as a problem to solve. I'm still learning which one I'm actually doing most days, but at least now I know to ask the question, which is more than I used to do before any of this. Maybe it was only ever to stay inside it a little longer than felt comfortable, since that seems to be where the actual learning was happening the entire time. If this video stayed with you, if this page stayed with you, I will see you on the next one.